Hello, Joseph Stiglitz.
Nice to be here.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for accepting my interview. You're a well-known economist. You earned the Nobel Prize of Economics in 2001. You were economist-in-chief of the World Bank and member of the Bill Clinton's Council of Economic Advisors. Last June, you published a new essay, The Road to Freedom, Economics and the Good Society, just translated in French aux éditions Les Liens qui Libèrent. The title of your book is a reference to The Road of Serfdom by Friedrich Hayek, published in 1944, in which he argues that state interventionism tends to encroach increasingly on individual freedoms and can gradually lead to totalitarianism. Your goal is definitely not the same. You are trying to redefine freedom. In a nutshell, you don't want to leave the concept of freedom to the right wing. So, in your opinion, how does this right wing define freedom?
My view was that Hayek got it 180 degrees wrong. He was concerned both about economic freedom and political freedom, and believed that without economic freedom you would lose political freedom. He wrote the book in the aftermath of the Great Depression and the rise of Keynesian policies, recognizing the need for government to maintain the economy at full employment. And he was worried that this growing role of government would lead to subservience to serfdom. And therefore argued we should lead things to the free market. What I try to argue here is that freedom really means the space with which people have to do to fulfill themselves. Somebody at the point of starvation really has no freedom. And that the expansion of one person's freedom may come at the expense of others. The freedom to carry an AK-47 means other people no longer have the freedom to live, or freedom from fear. The freedom not to wear a mask or not to get vaccinated means somebody, again, may lose the freedom to live. So my critique begins with saying they first don't understand what freedom of one individual means, and they don't understand how in a integrated society one person's freedom depends on that of another, and more broadly that certain kinds of collective action working together can expand the freedom of all of us. Having a simple regulation like traffic lights, stop lights, that regulate when cars can go one way or the other can prevent gridlock and give everybody more freedom to move. Investments in mRNA vaccines give us the freedom to live. But that means you have to pay for that basic research, and that means you have to have taxes. It's a slight restriction that actually, in a broader sense, expands our freedom.
And do you see a link between Friedrich Hayek and, for example, Donald Trump?
Yes. I wanted to say one more thing, that what we've experienced is that the growth of authoritarian populism comes greater in societies where government has done too little rather than government has done too much. And that's where Donald Trump comes in, and the United States.
And Hayek wasn't in that mindset.
Exactly. He did not understand that in a democratic society, if you don't address the legitimate concerns of the vast majority, you will create a fertile field for authoritarianism, for a demagogue. I wrote that in my book in 2012, The Price of Inequality. I didn't imagine somebody as evil as Donald Trump, as effective as a demagogue as Donald Trump. But we had it in the 1930s, Hitler, and we had it in the 20s with Mussolini in Italy. So we know from history the possibility that these kinds of demagogues can arise, succeed in countries that we would not expect this from.
You're calling Donald Trump a demagogue, and you just said, and it's also in your book, that, like, for example, poor people, very, very poor people, do not have freedom. Okay, but Donald Trump won the popular vote in your country. Among his voters, there are many poor people. Do you consider that they have been cheated by intense propaganda, or there may be a legitimate aspiration for another conception of freedom?
No, I think they have the sense, partly right, that the current system has failed them. That's clear. And the current system is one that has been supported by who you might call the establishment in both the old Republican Party of Bush and Reagan and the old neoliberalism, and by the Democratic Party, including Clinton. So their view is basically anti-establishment.
They want to try something else.
They want to try something else. Trump is something else. It won't serve their interest, but Kamala Harris was not something else. She was a continuation of Biden. When she was asked, is there anything that you could do that you would do differently from what Biden? She couldn't think of anything. So she failed to distance herself from the 45 years of failure of neoliberalism on the left and on the right. What she needed to do is to come forward and say, look, we have problems with monopolies, we have problems with exploitation, we have problems with inequality in our society, inequalities in economic power and political power, and we're going to try to address them. She didn't do that. So on the one hand, you have Trump giving, admittedly, an ugly vision. The problems were due to others, to foreigners, to immigrants. That was a vision, you might say an ugly vision. And she was saying, we'll spend a little bit more on this or a little bit more on that. And they said, we've had enough of that.
But he speaks also a lot about freedom, about liberty, you know. And do you think when he's addressing that issue, he's giving the American people an illusion? Or is it something, in a way, his definition of freedom is a little bit legitimate?
Oh, I think she was trying to address some of the issues that I talk about in my book. And I was very pleased that she was picking up these, because one of my criticisms is that the left has failed to grasp freedom into their agenda. They acceded it to the right, when I thought the right was not delivering freedom, didn't understand freedom. And so I thought one of the reasons I wrote the book is to recapture freedom, the freedom agenda from the left. The problem was that coming from her, it didn't resonate. And it didn't resonate because when the concept that I said is freedom was about what you could do, the ability to live up to your potential. And her economic agenda seemed to be like that of what we've had the last 45 years, and people have said, we know that that's not going to work. So you talk about these words of freedom, and in some ways really important, like women's reproductive rights freedom. That was important, and that resonated very strongly. But on the economic issue, it didn't resonate because it was married with a failed economic philosophy.
In Jacobin magazine, you know that magazine, they wrote a review about your book, and in that review they say that you were trying to redefine freedom, for example, not for freedom to be only the choice for people to choose between a Coke and a Pepsi. It was their proposition, you know, in the review. And I was like, because they said it's an illusion, you know, just to have the choice between Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola. And I was like, maybe it's true, maybe it's an illusion, but, you know, in a way, it's also something very, you know, deep inside us, inside of all, you know, to have the possibility to choose between a Coca-Cola and a Pepsi-Cola, to have to choose between wearing, for example, a red shirt or a white shirt, you know. It's something very common, but it's also something very deep. Don't you agree? You know, it's because you said, you know, at the beginning, when you're very poor, you don't have freedom. And I think I disagree. You still have a little bit of freedom. You can say it's an illusion, of course. You can say it's something made by the mercantile or capitalist society, but it's also very important because it's what maintains you alive, you know, to have this feeling of freedom.
Oh, it's important, but it's not enough.
Of course.
So what I wanted to go is deeper into what does it really mean for an individual to have the freedom to make important choices. So I don't want to deny the people the right to have choice between Pepsi-Cola and
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola. That's fine for me, and I wouldn't want anybody to dictate that choice. And one of the reasons I talk a little bit about progressive capitalism, I want to have that kind of competition in the marketplace that gives people that choice. But, you know, for poor people in the United States, you can't choose to have Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola. You're out on the street begging every day. But the important choice is, can you live up to your possibilities? And what your potentialities are. And the fact is that very large fractions of Americans and French people do not today have that choice of living up to their potentialities. And so a free society, in my mind, tries to give that freedom to as many people as possible.
Let's talk a little bit about Marx. For Marx, freedom does not exist in the absolute and is nothing other than the process that produces it. This liberation presupposes the knowledge of what contradicts it. First of all, the alienation of class societies and the conviction of the possibility of another society. The possibility, not the necessity. This projection leads toward communism, that is to say the social state where the free development of each is the condition of the free development of all. Is this a definition of freedom that suits you? I know you're not a Marxist, but...
I think there are some elements that are common, but many elements that are different. So what I do think that's somewhat different from standard neoliberal economics and most modern economics is they think of the individualism as separate from society. And much of my writing explains that individual preferences, what they believe, is very interdependent on others, that we don't live in isolation. And so if we are going to solve any of these problems or address any of these problems, we have to think about it from the point of view of not just isolated individuals, but the whole community. And that's one of the core points of this book, is that one person's freedom is another person's unfreedom, that they're very interdependent. But also one of the points that I make in the second part of the book is this, that our economic system shapes us. And shapes our beliefs. If we are embedded in a system of ruthless capitalism, of selfishness, more likely we will wind up being a selfish person. If we believe greed is good, you're going to have more people who are selfish. If we have a society that rewards people like Donald Trump, who are liars and dishonest, you will wind up with people who are more dishonest. So that's why the subtitle of my book is Economics and the Good Society. I'm trying to struggle here to try to understand what does it mean to be a good society, and how we can arrive at a good society, a society where the potential of us to live up to our potential is very much part of a social system as well, and has to be viewed from that perspective.
Do you consider yourself as an idealist? Or like, for example, because when you say good society, it's in the title of your book, and sometimes I'm like, okay, it's like ideas, but like the real dynamics of the societies, and especially your society, like the American society, are not totally, you know, they are not going like in the same way, you know?
Yes. Well, so I view myself very much as a realist. So when I write, I don't expect us to get to where I would like us to be. I think that the role of intellectuals like me is to help push or pull society along, to try to help crystallize ideas. Ideas matter. You know, one of the themes that differs maybe from some aspects of Marxian thought is that interests matter, but so do ideas. And that I believe that by people's understanding of freedom or what is a good society can maybe help us move in that direction. So I don't think we'll get to where I would like to be, but I do think that articulating I don't want to say ideal, because I never write down what I think is the ideal. I talk about moving in the direction, or how do we, as democratic societies, move in that direction. At one point in the book, I'm very explicit about where I talk about, in your words, the realism. I think that, unfortunately, the history of revolutions has not been very good. They have moved society, but the immediate aftermath has often had a very bad downturn. And you can think of the Cultural Revolution after the Chinese Revolution as being one more recent example. That leads me to the view that too much disruption of societies, the trauma is too great. So I talk about trying to move society as fast as you can without rupturing society.
It's interesting because I'm French, and you know, in France, the French Revolution in 1789, you know, was like a very important moment in our history, in the history of our republic, and of course, it was a violent moment. You know, for us, it was a great moment. You know, in our like tradition.
Yeah, but you know, we read a lot, or at least about what happened immediately after some of the violence. It led to Napoleon, which did so many good things, but was the Napoleonic Wars were not didn't end well for France, and even the French eventually exiled him. So the whole period was one that had a long-term legacy that was very positive, but a short-term consequence that was very traumatic. And
yes, but for example, you know, where there were the yellow jackets. Have you heard about the yellow jackets in France, like a few years ago? You know, for us, it was like riots, like everywhere in France. But for us, it was something very good. You know, it was like all the French people were like for the yellow jackets. You know, we were supporting them and to say, yes, we can do that. We can make another revolution. You know, it's our time, the time of the people. You know, and we were not afraid of what you said about like being too disruptive or like, you know, like to prefer. We don't prefer in France, you know, the
smooth
exactly changes.
Yeah, two comments. One, nothing came of that. It was not a changing society that was brought about. And the one thing that happened as a result of the Yellow Vest is it set back the green transition. And the survival of the planet depends on the green transition. So in some sense, it was fundamentally a step backwards. So,
yes, but it was also a moment when we were able to say, we the people.
Yes.
So for us, it was a very important democratic moment.
I understand that.
In terms of laws, okay, it was on policies, it was not the best, of course, but maybe because of Macron more than because of the yellow jackets.
So I think that's maybe I think of myself more of a child of the Enlightenment, of trying to reason our way through, but recognizing that and looking at these ruptures where too often you can't reason. And that's why I have a somewhat of a preference for pushing the economy and trying to reason than for another revolution. Just the history of the revolutions has not been one that makes you feel optimistic that it would succeed in accomplishing what I would like to see.
I have one last question. You talked about it a little bit earlier, but like when you look at the political left wing in your country, do you say to yourself that it is following a good direction? You talked about like the establishment of the Democratic Party, and but is it the direction of the Democratic Party today? You know, to stay with that democratic establishment, or is it moving forward? I don't know. From France, you know, it's very difficult to understand exactly where the Democratic Party is going to.
So there are many splits within the Democratic Party. The long-standing split has been between the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and the centrist wing. The centrist wing historically been associated like with finance, and big business, and with a more humane heart than the Republican big business. You know, and I can say, yeah, these are often very good people, but they've really within the neoliberal tradition, versus the more progressive that wants to take stronger anti-monopoly powers, more redistribution, a more progressive agenda. That's been a fundamental split. It was very strong in the Clinton administration. Bob Reich and I were on one side, and then you have Bob Rubin, and then on the other side you have Larry Summers. So we had a lot of, you might say, exciting times, fights, and Clinton in that sense was very good because he was a big tent. But in the end, I think it was the right side that prevailed.
Each time after Clinton?
Most of the time.
Okay.
Not on every issue.
For Al Gore, Obama, Clinton.
But so Al Gore was very committed to the environment, and we made big successes there. In the telecommunications bill with Al Gore, we had strong protections against monopoly that turned out not to be enough, but it was a big fight between the right that wanted, the center left that wanted very little protections, and those of us who wanted more protections. So we had at every level we had that kind of debate. One example where we lost, I opposed the lowering of taxes on capital gains, the main source of income of the very rich. People like Larry Summers wanted to create more inequality in our society, and succeeded. So, but that hurt the Democratic Party and our country.
And today, Kamala Harris was defeated. So now what? What is where is going the Democratic Party to?
So there is a debate whether.
Yes, but you said the right wing of the Democratic Party is always winning at the end of the day.
And the hope is that going forward, the progressive wing will win.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is right now, there's a debate is, why did the Democratic Party lose? And the progressives say it's because the 45-year or 30 of neoliberalism failed, and we did not provide an alternative vision.
Okay.
The progressive have an alternative vision. Biden began that. We had industrial policy, we had anti-monopoly policies that were very strong, redistribution policies, poverty among children were reduced by 40%. So we really, there was a real success from the progressive side. Now, within the progressive movement, there's another set of splits. To what extent should we be focusing on economic issues, and to what extent should we focus on social issues? And there is a view that I somewhat subscribe to, that one of the reasons for the defeat of the Democrats was that ordinary Americans who had suffered so much from the neoliberalism thought the Democratic Party was too focused on social issues when they were facing pocketbook issues. So the debate is, should the progressive movement focus on progressive economic issues, and to what extent should we focus on progressive social issues? Now, everybody recognizes the importance of social justice, and so it's not a question of denying the importance of these issues of social justice, the social issues, but it's saying that given where the American electorate is today, given their feeling of angst, economic angst, life expectancy going down, deaths of despair, given all those economic problems, they want an economic response. And I think we may have, to use an American expression, missed the boat. We didn't respond to what they were seeing as the critical issues they were facing.
And I hope you're going to have the opportunity to take the next boat. That's, like the state of your democracy, is not with Donald Trump. I don't know like how
it's worse than you think, because one aspect of the Trump agenda is to weaken our democracy, to engage in gerrymandering, voter suppression. Those who disagree with them will not have the ability to express their views politically. So we will have rule not by the majority but by the minority to try to preserve old power relations rather than to create a democratic society.
So good luck to you, Joseph, and good luck to all the American people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.